again, Senate Government Operations, we're back. Now we are looking at S-171, which is the creation of a state code of ethics. And I think that the way it makes sense for us to do this right now is to kind of go through the bill, just look, we'll just go page by page. So for those of you who aren't with us all the time, we have a kind of a tradition of doing this so that we look at like section 1, we'll look at the definitions, and if there's anything where we need to put a hold for more discussion, we'll just put a hold. Otherwise, we're done with it. So just so that we don't keep going back over the same territory over and over again, because that we as legislators have the ability to keep like cows re-chewing and swallowing and re-chewing again. I think they do it 7 times, if I'm not mistaken. So the two of you on agriculture should know that, right? They chew and swallow. They chew and swallow their cud. I think it's 7 times.
That's because they have so many stomachs.
Anthony, you were testifying on that the other day, weren't you?
Yeah, we're having a study done actually, because there's some controversy about how many times it actually is. So A&R and the Agency of Agriculture can't agree.
Yeah, perfect.
And does the number of times they chew and swallow have anything to do with the methane emissions?
Well, that's part of what we're going to find out.
That's probably why
There's
they're
a task force.
Okay.
Good answer.
Enough of that. Thank you very much. So let's then just take out 171 and look at, is there any issue on page 1 that we need to further address? I think the only change is the confidential information, and that's been put in there, and that isn't a new definition. It's
page
all
1
right.
is good to go.
Okay. Hearing none. Page 2. Is there anything on there that we would like to address? I have a couple, but if anybody has any.
I've heard there's some issues around the conflict of interest definition.
Right.
Yes.
I think that was on our list.
Okay. And I would actually like to look again at line 16.
And gift. Is
Yeah.
that gift?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. How about page 3?
Oh, okay. We're just going to keep going and identify. So we're going to.
What?
Okay. I see what you're doing.
Well, I want to go through and get rid of the things that we don't need to ever talk about again. Flag the things that we want to have further discussion on, and then we'll go back and have the further discussion. Okay, so page 3.
Did we come to a conclusion about immediate family?
I have flagged that.
Yeah.
Okay, yep.
Page 4. I know that Senator Clarkson brought up the,
Sorry, I haven't gotten to page 4 yet. Yeah, persons.
well, and I don't know if Amarin did or not. I went through and looked at every place where person is used and where it should be changed to individual that I thought, and where it should remain person. So we could go through that at some point.
Yeah, I'd love to do that.
Okay. So page 5.
Wait a minute. I'm just cruising through 4. You're moving.
That's the advantage of printing them out.
Yeah, and I stupidly haven't printed this out, so I should have.
Page 5 is where the General Assembly comes up, the question about General Assembly.
Mhm.
And where the code of ethics applies, you mean?
Yeah, whether General Assembly is excluded.
Right, I would say the exclusions are a whole area for us, for obvious.
So I would like to further understand lines 11 through 14.
On page 5.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
But
then,
number 3.
and then starting on page 15. I mean, line 15.
I was gonna say.
Right.
I also, I think, would like us to look on page 5. I mean, sorry, I'm sorry, line 5 about and
Boards
have
and
a little
commissions.
more discussion on state boards and commissions,
Yeah,
what that means.
important.
And yes,
Okay, page 6.
well, yeah, the interplay with the state boards and commissions and with conflicts and interests is possibly a big one.
Yes, that's why we're flagging it.
Yeah.
But we're just flagging now. Now, we're not addressing them. Okay, page 6. I would like us to address conflict of interest.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And the whole page 6 and 7 are conflict of interest, I think, down to line 13. Okay, page 8. Anybody?
There's something's going off, like,
Yeah, that's me.
oh, that's
In order for
you.
me to leave my microphone on, that's the house bell.
Yes, I can hear it. It's very interesting that I thought they were all remote for the House meeting.
Oh,
I
no,
don't know
they're-
what's going on. I'm
No.
having trouble just keeping our things separate, so.
They're hybrid.
I don't.
No, the
have any
House, the
problem-
floor action is remote.
Okay, I don't have any problem with anything on page 8.
I don't either.
Appearance, okay, well,
What?
there's a- anyway, I have to reread, I have to look at it more closely. Appearance is always an
That
interesting
is connected to conflict of interest. It's the appearance of conflict of interest. So they were going to talk about the whole conflict of interest.
Exactly, great.
Okay.
Good.
All right. Page 9.
Gifts.
Yep. Okay. All right.
Not that we get it, I mean, we don't get any.
No, I think we can go
important
through this
to-
pretty quickly once we start. Okay.
Yeah.
And page 10 is gifts exceptions.
Yep.
We can talk about that under gifts. Page 11.
Event attendant. Hmm.
That's part
know
of
we-
gifts,
Yeah,
Allison.
no, I know, I'm just looking at it.
Right.
So don't spend time thinking about them until
Right,
we
and-
get to them.
Employment restrictions, okay.
We
Okay.
did talk about the outside employment, but I'm not sure we ever resolved it, so it's probably still something to flag.
Okay.
Well, and I think it bears being reminded what the legislators, what we have to comply with the post-government employment. It would just be good to be reminded.
Of which one?
Lines 18
Yeah.
and 19.
Okay, well, that is current law.
I know, I just would like to be reminded because we could be expanding it if we wanted. I mean, it doesn't have to just be what that is.
Okay.
That's the law, but
All right, we can look at that. Page 12.
I don't have any issues with 12.
I don't either. Page 13.
No issues.
And page 14.
Same, no issues.
See, we got through many pages without,
That was easy. All in favor?
so I'm going to committee, I'm going to, I don't know how many of you saw, and I apologize because apparently I have an inability to create documents that can be opened. And now I can't even find the document that I sent you. But I did send out a document, and thank goodness Christina was able to somehow get it to people so that they could open it. I couldn't.
Yes, thank you,
apparently.
Christina. Your resending it meant that we could access it. So
Thank
late
you.
last night at like 11:30, or when you responded at like 10 of 11, and I was printing it out at 11:30.
So one of the things, this is kind of a very simple thing that I suggested, that the 12 points that are listed, which are I'm calling them points because I don't know what else to call them. Somebody might have a better term. They are the kind of nuts of what the Code of Ethics covers, and then there's information under them. But it seemed to me as if numbers 3 and 4 were not their own topics. They were really part under Code of Conflict, because one, conflict of interest, because one talked about if you recuse yourself after a conflict of interest, what you do, what you're going to do there, conduct after recusal. And the other one is the appearance of conflict. So I in my mind, they all fit in with under the topic conflict of interest, but 2 seemed like it was its own point, directing others to do unethical things. I don't know, Ameren and Christina, you can comment on that. It just seemed to me that if you're that the conduct after recusal is really part of conflict of interest. It isn't its own point, and nor is the appearance of conflict. It is part of conflict of interest. So I don't know how anybody else feels about that, but that's just a simple renumbering. That isn't looking at the content of them or anything.
Right. So where are you when the 12 points start? Because they start, they're definitions, and then where
They start on page 6,
Yeah,
number 1, conflict
thank
of interest.
That's what I'm wondering where you are. Page
Well,
6.
they start on
Yep.
page 6, conflict of interest. And then number 2 is directing unethical conflict, which I think is its own ethical issue. But I think conduct after recusal, rightly, and appearance of unethical conduct really, it's appearance of unethical conduct, not appearance of conflict of interest. Okay, I take that one back then. But I do think the recusal after a conflict is belongs under conflict of interest. Which is simply renumbering. It's not getting into the guts of it at all.
It's just putting 3 under the first piece, which is conflict of interest. It's giving it another little Romanette.
Yeah, so then you would have,
Yeah,
instead
I
of
got
12, you'd have 11 points.
Yep.
Right.
Okay. So that, as you can see, was one of my suggestions. And then I don't know if Ameren, did you go through and look at the person versus individual?
For the record, Ameren Abergele Legislative Council, no, I have not, but I agree that that is a good exercise, and I'm happy to do that for the next round.
Or if we want to do it now, we can just, it takes about 5 minutes.
Well,
And then Allison, you can be happy about it.
well, maybe, or maybe not.
Okay, so everywhere person is used, when person is used in conflict of interest, whether we use this definition or not, I think we mean individual.
Correct.
Agreed.
Yeah,
Um,
but that goes to the definition of person at the beginning, which is for the purposes of the ethics code, I think a person isn't a business or an organization. It is a person.
I thought that our decision was to leave that definition there, but then to change in the places where we mean an individual person, change it to individual, because there are places in here where we do mean organizations and businesses.
But then
Yep.
why don't we call them what they are instead of what they aren't, which is a person? Why don't we then say, call out any organization or business or association or group? I think that a person is a person, is an individual.
I'm
And
not
an
gonna, I
organization
don't think we should argue about that. In Vermont law, a person is considered an organization or a, whatever it says here. And that is the way person is used. We can change it in here, but I think it would be confusing for people unless they also read the entire definitions when they read the code of ethics. If they read it as person, they don't know what the definition of person is for this particular one. So they're going to go by the state definition of person. So why can't we just say individual when we mean individual? That's the way we did it in campaign finance. We said individual.
Yep.
I mean, I don't know if anybody else agrees with that or not.
I would agree.
I do.
If you ask somebody on the street, when you say person, what do you mean? I bet
Yes.
you 9 times out of 10, they would not be confused and they would say, oh, you're a person. They would not point to a church and say, oh, that's a person. They'd say, oh, that's a church. It's an organization.
They would not, Allison, but what is the harm of using the term individual when we mean individual person?
There's not. I'm thrilled with that.
Okay, that's all I'm asking us to do.
Right.
So we leave the definition of person, and then we look at any place in conflict of interest, like on line 7, if you look at it, it
Yeah.
should be individual, not person. It's an individual. Right?
Right.
And whether we use this language or not, it's going to be an individual in the conflict of interest.
Right.
Okay. When, I think I caught them all on page 4.
Can I just be small point though here before we leave the definition?
Yes.
I know you're tired of my doing this, but when you underline it, it means we're defining it anew. At least it strikes. I mean, isn't that why it's underlined, Ameren?
It's underlined here because it's new in this thing. It isn't new in state law. It isn't a new definition.
But our choice in going forward, do we have to accept the state's definition? I guess my question is, do we have to accept the state's definition of person, or can we be defining person for this law, for this statute differently?
So then on page 4, when we have prohibited source means any person, we would have to say here it means any individual, any business, any association, any political. We would have to redefine person there because that's what it means there. It does not mean individual.
Right. I see what you.
Ameren?
I just wanted to clarify that the definition of person that's added into this chapter is not the same exactly the same definition of person that is within Title I, Chapter 3, Construction of Statutes.
What is the definition there?
Person shall include any natural person, corporation, municipality, the state of Vermont, or any department, agency, or subdivision of the state, and any partnership, unincorporated association, or other legal entity.
Okay. Well, I don't want us to argue about this. This is state law. This is the accepted
Fine.
language. If we want to use the definition of person here as individual, group, business, entity, association, or organization, I'm fine with that. I don't know how others feel.
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with it. Although it makes me wonder why we don't just use the one that Ameren just said.
Because I think that the state code of ethics does not apply to municipalities and those others.
Okay.
I
And
think,
then-
Well, Ameren, looks like you were going to say something, Ameren.
Ameren,
I would also say that under the current definition under Title I of person, it would include the state of Vermont or any department or agency or subdivision, which I don't know that you
Right.
would necessarily want to include for some of these around prohibitions of gifts and receiving things. If you're a state employee receiving something from another state agency, the definition doesn't work quite right that way.
Right. I agree.
Great. Okay. And so we'll use individual when we mean individual, and we'll keep the definition.
and so on page 4 where it says person, we mean person as defined here, I believe. Is that right, Christina and Ameren?
Yes.
Line 6.
Line 6, yeah. And then,
So just
On
as an
page-
example, and it says an example, in that case, person could be a corporation.
yes,
Okay, just to be clear.
it's the definition of person.
Right.
So on page 5, when we use persons, under applicability, we mean individuals. It applies to all individuals elected or appointed.
Correct.
Individuals, yeah,
Because you couldn't have a corporation elected to do something.
there's where we use individuals,
Yep.
okay? In, there are a number of cases, places in here where individual is already used. On page 7, on line 14, I think a public servant shall not direct another person. It should be individual, I think.
Yep. Because you can't direct a corporation. Yeah.
If only we could.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think Anthony would like to.
And on page 8, the appearance of unethical conduct, on line 5, the perspective of a reasonable individual with knowledge of the relevant facts.
Yep.
Right.
And on preferential treatment,
Yep. There's
there I don't know if it should be person or individual, because I think it says should not give preferential treatment to any person because of the person's wealth, position, or status. That could apply to a corporation or an organization. So that should remain person, right?
Yes.
Yep. Line 8 and 9.
Okay. Let me see if I found other places.
I was just cruising, but you got, that was still back.
What?
Oh.
You can tell how I had such a titillating evening last night, going through looking for person in here.
And Ameren, all Ameren has to do is press a button and all the persons. pop
No,
up.
because we don't change all of them.
No, I'm just saying, she has the ability with her program in Ledge Council to just say, show me where person pops up, and it just does.
And then she just has to decide whether she should change it or not. Yes. okay,
Exactly.
I see what you mean.
Line
I'm-
18 also has person.
Yeah. In number 7, misuse of information.
I think that could be person.
I think you're right, now that I read it again.
Yeah, because it could be financial gain of an organization or a business.
Yep.
That might be the only
And then on line
21.
20, on line 21,
Yep,
Did I
that should
miss
be
that?
individual, I think.
on line 21 under misuse of government resources.
Yep.
See,
I'm not sure if
Well-
we might want that to remain person.
Yeah, it might be better, yeah.
So if anybody else finds any, I don't have any others. Maybe I ran out of steam.
I doubt it. Okay, great. Thank you. I think if it pops up, we'll focus on it, but I think we've flogged it pretty fully.
Only on line 13, page 13, line 16. If we put, it says in person, if we put a dash between, a hyphen between in and person, it's clear that it's in person. We know what that
Right.
means. Okay. So I don't know if anybody else looked at, had any time to look at definitions. I did send you the definition of immediate family for the UVM Board of Trustees. At the top of the,
Right, definition of immediate family from UVM.
mhm. It doesn't go into your grandmother, your in-law grandmother and all of those. I thought it was a pretty clean definition, but I may be wrong. If other people can comment on that, I don't.
Well, it's better. Didn't somebody else send ideas about the definition of family? Am I dreaming that? I thought I saw some other definitions floating around in the emails. Christina, did you send? No? Okay, maybe I'm wrong.
She did send information on post-employment or
Maybe that's what I was
um,
thinking. Okay.
competitive jobs, whatever you want, however you want to call that,
So
outside employment.
the phrase "and any relative residing in the same household," I guess I'm not clear how wide a universe that could be.
Well, I think it means if your mother-in-law is living with you, then there probably is, she probably would be considered part of your immediate family. But it wouldn't be anybody living in your household, because you could have 4 young professionals who rent a house together who are not related in any
Okay,
form. So you don't want to have anybody who lives in the same household. I think that's the intent there.
okay.
But I don't know, TJ, does that sound?
I don't have the UVM
Oh,
definition in front of me, so I apologize for that.
it says spouse or civil union partner, child, parent, sibling, or such relations by marriage or civil union partnership. So it'd be parent, child, or sibling by marriage or civil union partnership. Person claimed as a dependent for federal income tax purposes, and any relative residing in the same household as the trustee. There may be other family members as to whom owed, I don't know what that says, in favor of disclosure. So that sometimes there might be other people that you should
think it's-
disclose for, but that's on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, I think that verb is moved.
Moved. Okay.
That's consistent with how most other states define this. Most of the situations that crop up are in the realm of civil union adjacent type relationships, people who are living together and whether the code should apply to them, living together in an amorous way.
No, we did have domestic partner in here, but
Yeah.
it isn't in here. I noticed that. Yeah. I think you might be right. We should add domestic partner.
I think that's good. And is there a reason that there were, Christine, who made the choice to make this so expansive?
So honestly, that was before my time. So that would be Larry Novins. And I do think that there was some element of being aspirational here. And so I do concur that it could and probably should be more narrow than it's written now.
So
I do
I'm
think the
not,
source was the federal code of ethics. I believe that was his original source. And that was
Oh.
where he was looking when he found this definition.
and I'm not wedded to the UVM one. I just picked that up because I am a former trustee and we had to sign a thing about 40 pages long about this, but so I just went there last night and looked it up. Allison, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I don't know how, and maybe TJ or Christina have an idea about this, but anybody that, that you're related to that you could make a choice about that would benefit. In a very direct way. A grandchild, we make decisions about financing grandchildren's education or whatever. Is there a way that, without being so prescriptive, that also gets at other family bonds that would benefit that are inappropriate, or is that just way too? It also benefits everybody else's grandchildren too. Some of those. So
I
policies.
think the last sentence on the UVM addresses
Or
that.
other family members as to whom.
I
I don't know what the verb is. It doesn't make sense with moved either.
I know. Pat had a a comment.
They owed, anyway, to who would benefit, or, yeah, if we
Pat-
think about that line, that might cover it.
It says, and to whom disclosure should also be made to avoid the
Right.
appearance of conflict. That's to whom disclosure should also be made in
Good.
favor of, in order to avoid the appearance of conflict. I guess I ran out of typing space or something, but Pat, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. This is a section that's been bothering me a lot, only because there are so many ways you can go with this definition. I sent you, and this may be what Senator Polina is referring to, a definition that we used at DMV, and I was involved in that discussion, and that was years ago, which was interesting because it didn't have domestic partner and the things that we now know should be included. My recommendation is, and you mentioned this on page 8, if you included perceived conflict of interest, that serves a whole bunch of purposes. It is on many lists. I went out and did a Google search, and perceived conflict of interest is part of several definitions. It not only opens up the door to all the things you were talking about in-laws and about this person and that person, but it also, in my mind, gives a sense of, I don't want to use the word comfort, to the public, because it says maybe I'm wrong. I'm just perceiving this, and it may allow them the comfort of going forward and saying, "Hey, I think Pat McDonald shouldn't be voting on this." And I have to tell you a story. I'll do it quick. Governor Snell, when I was working for Governor Snelling, I had to talk to him about something I thought might be a conflict of interest for me. And this is what he said to me. He said, if you're asking the question, somebody somewhere will consider it a conflict of interest because they will perceive it to be so. And that's been in my head for 10 years, 15 years. And that's why I think you need to keep it narrow, not as narrow as the DMV thing, because that was a different time, because things have changed in our relationships. But keep it simple and add the words perceived conflict of interest. And I think that will solve your problem. That's just my 2 cents. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. And I think the way that last sentence reads, the way it really reads, not the way I typed it, is that there may be other family members as to whom disclosure should also be made to avoid the appearance of conflict.
Right.
So it says there are others that
Right.
in particular situations that you should.
And people will perceive all sorts of things, I have come to find out over my years in state government. And sometimes it's true, and sometimes with explanation, it turns out not to be true. So it opens the door for conversation.
So what does anybody think about that definition? Or is it still too broad or too narrow? But I think we do need to add domestic partner as defined in wherever it's defined. That reference that's in the
I
current
think
bill.
it's good. I think it's good.
Can I ask a question, Madam Chair, about
Sure.
civil union partners? Is that's not something, I know it's legal, but it's not something that necessarily we do anymore, or?
No, but there
or-
are still people who have civil union partnerships.
I'll take it back, sorry.
Yeah,
Thank
they
you.
didn't go the extra step.
Okay,
That's
thank
why
you.
we still have it there.
Thank you.
I thought about that too, and so I checked
Yeah.
that.
I guess I think it's fine.
I agree.
So how do we want to do this? I think there are some things that are going to be harder to tackle, like gift and conflict of interest. I have a couple other smaller things that I don't think are going to take a lot of conversation, but I just wanted clarity on them. One was the advisory opinion on page 6, line 7. And I have to admit, I don't remember the terms, but where am I? Page 6, line 7. Oh, no, yeah, line 7. Huh?
Beginning, a public servant may request either guidance or an advisory opinion.
Yeah, my understanding was that the way we did this is if I call you, Christina, and say, I don't know if this would be a conflict of interest, and so I'm just checking it out with you. Can you give me some advice? You would tell me, I mean, it isn't legal advice or anything, but you would say, you might want to think about that, and you should da 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 da. And I don't remember what that was called. And then if 14 people ask you the same thing, then you can write an advisory. And that advisory is public and just says, this seems to be an area where people are concerned about this. And so we're advising you that you might do this in these circumstances. So I'm confused about why we used guidance or an advisory opinion in this place.
Sure, I can clarify. So individuals can ask for guidance or for an advisory opinion. So the difference is that the guidance will always be confidential as long as the person requesting it wants it to remain so. An advisory opinion will be posted publicly on the website, but with personally identifying information redacted. And then the other scenario that you suggested, which is when the commission would proactively issue an advisory opinion, that would be in response to like a current issue, or if we're getting similar questions over and over again, and we thought it was prudent to do so.
Okay, so, but they're both called advisory opinions.
Yes, so
Okay.
that's for guidance or an advisory opinion.
Okay, good. So then I'm okay with that then. I just needed some clarification on that because I couldn't remember it.
Well, why would I ask for an advisory opinion? Wouldn't I always ask for guidance? Why would I want it posted?
I mean, it depends on the scenario. You might think that the public would benefit from knowing the answer. So
Okay.
yeah, it's up to the individual. I mean, in those cases, so you're asking about your own perspective conduct. So if your personal identifying information isn't going to be included, it might be something where you're like, I think this is an important issue and you want it to be available to the public.
Okay.
All right. So I think the next thing that I had on my list, if you have other ideas of the way we should be doing this, please let me know, because I don't want to be directing this necessarily or dominating it, but I think that the definition of post-employment, where is that? Page 11. And I know that I thought that those were pretty vague terms, but I also saw the Christine, when you sent out the HR, they use those exact same
Yes,
terms.
and the judiciary. Sorry.
And I didn't print out the judiciary one, but I really liked the judiciary definition. But I didn't print it out because it was 42 pages or some ridiculous thing. I mean, their whole policies. And I couldn't figure out how to print just that one little section. Did anybody else read that from the judiciary?
Yeah.
I'm embarrassed. Did they send it to and I just haven't?
No,
seen it?
Christina sent it to us.
Oh, Chris, did you? Oh, I didn't. No.
She sent us both the,
Oh, here it is. It's also on the web. It's right here on our website, so we can look at it right now.
and it was on page 28, as I remember it, and I didn't want to print out many pages, but
It's 110 pages.
okay.
So what page are you directing us to? 28?
I think it was on page 28. It took me, or maybe 58 or something. It took me a long time to scroll down to it. If you look at the table of contents, it'll tell you. It's under code of conduct or code of ethics.
Should be 60 or 61, I think. And I did cut
Is it?
out the portion and put it in the email, the portion that related to outside employment.
Oh, I didn't see that. I'm sorry. I apologize. I printed out the whole thing. I mean, I looked up the whole thing. I didn't. Christina, where are you? Oh
So
my
code
God.
of conduct is 58. Right. Can't do too many things here.
Since 1:30, I have received 150 emails.
About this?
No, about other things, but none of them are the kind of news feeds and stuff that I get. They're all, no, not about this.
I can't get.
What time did you send it, Christina? I found it. Now I lost it.
Last night or early this morning, she sent us one.
Okay.
morning.
Anyway, I did like that, their definition. I thought it was,
I think it was at 12:12.
Was it 12 something?
Yes.
I received one from Christina at 2:25 p.m.
Yep,
which
That's the
which
one.
is titled "Some Notes Attached."
yep, that's the one, Anthony.
There's two. So there's one about outside employment, which I sent earlier, which I think is at 12:12. And then there's one I sent just before we started, which was about notes on conflict of interest.
Right.
Right. Got it.
sorry
Got it.
about this.
So one was Connecticut, one was Rhode Island.
Yes, that would be the definitions in the codes of ethics in those states. And then I also sent around the definitions for outside employment that are currently in the judiciary's policies, as well as Vermont Human Resources policies.
I did get those.
And those
And
were
the
the
judicial branch one has A, B, C, and D.
So it's hard to bounce back and forth. Which one do we want to deal with first?
Let's deal with outside employment and look at how they define them. And HR defines it very similarly. They use exactly those same three words that I had some concern about. Judiciary does not, and I have lost your email. I clicked on it and it went completely away, and it didn't go into deleted.
I can resend it.
Thanks. Sorry about this. So anybody have any comments given?
Well, I like them both. I don't see any problem with the Vermont human resource personnel policy one either. It's
No.
it's more condensed. It seems makes a better read.
My concern is those 3 words, but
Which ones?
inconsistent, incompatible, or in conflict. And I particularly have concerns about that for those boards and commission members and legislators. Because HR already has the policy. So it's going to be their policy regardless of what we put in here, right?
That is correct. And I've also checked in with them, and right now the understanding that I have with Tom Waldman is that this actually also applies to board members and commissioners.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Okay, and who determines it for boards and commissions? Whether it's inappropriate, or is that the appointing agency?
Yep. Sorry, it's just an email. Yeah. So whoever it's already in place. And so I have to check the policy again, but I believe it's the appointing authority who would make that decision. So either in advance of the person being appointed or it comes up afterwards. But I am still on an ongoing conversation with Tom Waldman about it. So I can't really, by memory, give you all the details, but I believe that's correct.
Okay. I don't know what is happening to my email here, but whenever I click on an email from you, it goes nuts. Okay, forget it. I'm not going to try and go there because here it is. Oh,
Sorry, which of the many attachments are we looking at? I'm sorry, Oliver was leaving for Kansas City, so I had to say goodbye. I'm lost, I'm afraid at the moment.
Did you make sure that he didn't bring his little basket with him? We would not want him to be whisked off.
Or the little red shoes. No,
Yeah.
Everything, he's going to tell me how up to date everything is in Kansas City.
Okay.
They've gone about, as long as he doesn't come back with Omicron, we're okay.
Okay.
But are we on something with judiciary, not with judiciary? Are we, which of Christina's many helpful things that we're looking at?
Well, she sent us the Vermont HR personnel policy and procedure. And number 3 has employees shall not engage in any employment activity or enterprise. It's just been determined by appointing authority. So that would be the appointing authority for the boards and commissions to be inconsistent, incompatible, or in conflict with their duties. And then the judiciary says shall not engage in any employment activity or enterprise which may be determined by the employer's supervisor incompatible or in conflict. I guess they're pretty much the same, aren't they? Those are probably terms that are used. So I'm gonna drop my.
Those are
I'm gonna say we're okay. I'm okay.
Yeah, those are pretty
Which
good.
one?
Huh?
You're okay with which?
Well, I'm okay
what?
with the one that's in here
I think
in
The one
the
that's in
draft
the one
bill,
that's in the okay.
because it's
I was just going to point out something. I may be wrong about this, but the state one says employees shall not engage in any employment activity.
right.
And it says, or in conflict with the duties as a state employee. So if I'm on a board or commission, I'm not necessarily an employee. I'm just a volunteer on a commission.
I can say there's a section above that says who it applies to. And so it says it applies to appointees, and then I didn't include it, but if you refer back to the definition, the classifications of employees, appointees include board members, commissioners, members of councils. And so that is
Okay.
something that's actually just chatting with Tom Waldman about earlier. So I'm going to follow up with him, but that was also his understanding that they would fall under the category of appointees and be covered by this section.
Okay,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to belabor that point. I just didn't like those 3 words, but everybody seems to use it. And Tom told us that it's very common everywhere else, so I'm fine with them. So if I'm correct, we really have 2 major issues left that we have concern over. One is the conflict of interest and one is the gifts.
Yep.
Yeah,
And I'm going to suggest that we start with the gifts only because I've had more time to think about that than conflict of interest. So this is very selfish of me. If anybody else would like to start with the conflict of interest, I'm fine with that.
doesn't matter. We got to do them both anyway.
Yep. And you're driving the bus. Well, I'm fine with it.
That's a little dangerous.
but before we leave Christina's emails, Christina, were one of your attachments on gifts? I don't remember.
No, they were not.
No, I didn't think so. Yeah, as I recall. Okay, great. So we can go back to the bill.
So I on page 2, I would not use the definition of gift there because that is the lobbying, that is under campaign finance. I mean, under the lobbying statute. And that really applies to legislators, I believe. It's under the, as I remember it, it is, and I don't, and it says political contributions, anything less than adequate compensation, travel. I think we should not use that as a definition, but in fact, we should just under the code of ethics in number, whatever it is, 10 or whatever number deals with gifts, is just
9. It's on page 9 and it's number 9.
is just define what we mean by gift and what we don't mean by gift instead of using that definition at all. Because I think it's confusing because it really is under, I looked it up and I don't remember now, but I think it is clearly under the legislative definitions of gift from lobbyists. And I don't think that I think we should just have our own, legislators are going to be covered by that definition anyway, regardless of what we do with gifts here. They're going to be covered by that. But I don't know that.
You think the gifts on page 9 are relate back to just
No, if you look at the definition of gifts on page 2 under definitions, it says it has the same meaning as 2 BSEA 261, which is the lobbying section of the.
Right. But can Ameren read that to us because we don't have it in front of us?
Yes, I can read that to you.
Because the definition on page 9, I think most of those are pretty good.
Well, read the.
Yeah, but I'd love to hear from Ameren about the lobbyist definition.
Yes. And the headings where it's under also, not just the definition.
Right.
Ameren, please.
The heading, okay, so this is within Title II, Legislature, Chapter 11, Registration of Lobbyists, Section 261, which is entitled Definitions. Gift is under Subdivision 6, 6A. Gift means a political contribution. That was number 1. 2, anything of valuable anything of value, tangible or intangible, that is bestowed for less than adequate consideration, including travel expenses such as travel fare, room and board, and other expenses associated with travel. 3, a meal ticket or alcoholic beverage. 4, a ticket, fee, or expenses for or to any sporting, recreational, or entertainment event. 5, a speaking fee or honorarium, except actual and reasonable travel expenses. 6, a loan made on terms more favorable than those made generally available to the public in the normal course of business. And then subdivision B, gift does not mean 1, anything given between immediate family members. 2, printed education materials such as books, reports, pamphlets, or periodicals. 3, a gift which is not used and which within 30 days after receipt is returned to the donor, or for which the donor is reimbursed for its fair market value. And 4, a devise or inheritance.
So my concern with that is that applies to legislators. That's under the lobbyist thing for legislators. We will be held to that standard, whether we use it in the state code of ethics that applies to everybody or not. And even if we aren't covered under the state code of ethics, we will be held to that because that's the current law. So my problem in using that here is that I think we should just put our own definition of gift in here so that it's clear, instead of using that and then having a kind of another definition and then exemptions from definitions. It's mainly for clarity, and because I don't know why we would care what applies to lobbying efforts for legislators in this.
I agree.
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
I guess
I'm not
it
sure
It
either.
depends on
Oh,
what new definition we
Allison,
come up with.
Anthony was talking.
Well, I just say I'm not sure because I'm not sure what new definition we would come up with. The definition that Ameren read, which I know has relates to lobbyist gifts, seemed like not a bad definition to me. But I'm not sure if we can come up with something better. I'm not opposed to doing that.
No, I'm not saying that we shouldn't maybe even use that definition, but not refer back to that, because that's under the legislative lobbyist section of law. And
Right.
boards and commissions don't care. If they looked at that and they said, why would we be subject to that? We can put this in a definition, but I don't think we should refer to that. That's all I'm saying.
Sure, that makes sense. TJ has his hand up, I think, by the
Yeah,
way.
okay, TJ.
Yeah, I apologize. I just the way that most states have dealt with this, and this is hotly discussed and bandied over years in most states. The most successful provisions I've seen in terms of clarity, not just for the drafters, but for government officials, is to have an omnibus definition of gift. That it's something like anything of value for which full consideration isn't given, and then have specific carve-outs, which may number, in the dozens, and that provides anybody who's reading it with clarity as to what falls outside of gift, and everything else falls within. But that's, and again, states, I think Connecticut has like 30 exceptions to their gift statute, which may be too many, but you often come up with about a dozen of the same definition, anything under $20. But what it allows people to do is they can read it and very clearly see that it's either one of the exceptions or it's a gift. And it also makes ease in an amendment, and you will amend it. At least that's my guess, because most states do. They get into actually parsing it out, and they're saying, we really don't mean to have whatever it is be a gift. So let's add that as another exemption from what gift is.
So if I can read the UVM definition of and again, this was part of the thing that I wasn't looking for this, but it was what I printed out last night. No trustee shall solicit or accept from any person, and then because they don't have person in the same definition. They say organization, corporation, or other legal entity seeking to do or doing business with or otherwise gain benefit from the university shall not accept for including gift, gratuity, services, loans, travel, entertainment, or other considerations of more than additional value, nominal value in exchange for a promise or reasonable inference that the trustee's influence with the university has been exchanged for such consideration. I mean, it very clearly says you can't accept a gift that is meant anything outside of nominal value in exchange for a promise to do something or an implied promise to do something. And I think that's kind of where we want to go. And then we have the exceptions, like you said, underneath that a gift is not a gift from mom to son, even though son works for the Public Utilities Commission and mom owns Green Mountain Power. I mean, so I don't know, but it seems to me that's the direction we want to go, is we want to do what TJ just said, is have a definition. And then if there are exemptions, and that we put those in.
I think
Yep.
that's a good way to go.
Ben,
I
did
like
you
it.
have a?
I was just going to, for the record, Ben Kinsley, Campaign for Vermont. I was just going to agree with what where you're going with that. In the research that we've done, it does seem like the most clear definitions of gifts are ones that say anything of monetary value, except for basically what that lobbying definition was doing, and saying, except for educational materials or gifts between family members that are clearly, due to a personal relationship, something like that. So that does seem like the cleanest route to go, is like, here, and the gift is anything of value except for like these specific things aren't counted in that definition.
And it also doesn't mention the dollar amount, which I think is good. I think avoiding a dollar amount makes sense, because it's like $10 today is not $10 next year. It just seems like it's hard to deal with the dollar amount.
The example that we've seen of this is like, usually the term is of a de minimis nature. So the example I often see of that de minimis nature is, you can take a legislator out and have a cup of coffee, right? So most states will allow you to do that. You can buy a legislator a cup of coffee, but anything more than that, you take them out for a steak dinner and, you get a bottle of wine, like that is, that's what we're trying to, that's the line. It's like cup of coffee, great, do that. Anything more than that, that's where we start getting into dangerous territory.
A lot of the lobbyists here buy Boone Farm, so I think that's under. No. Sorry about that. I am sorry about that. But so I like the idea of not even defining the $20 or the $15 or whatever, but I will tell you that legislators will still have that amount because it is in our lobbying statutes. So even if everybody, so regardless of what we do here, legislators are going to still be held to that $20. If Ben takes me for a cup of coffee, that's fine. But if he buys me breakfast at the same time and it's more than $20, then he has to report it. So that's part of our campaign finance law.
Problem with that is that in a year or two, $20 is barely going to cover a cup of coffee.
Very possible.
I know. That's why we go to Ma's Diner instead of Starbucks for coffee, where it's still $1. But the I just want to remind us that even if we don't put an amount in here, we will still, under our campaign finance law, be covered by the amount that's in there. Am I right about that, Ben?
Yes, that is true. This doesn't negate the definition, and really that the definition. I actually kind of agree with the way that this is confusing, because the definition is supposed to apply to lobbyists who are giving gifts to legislators. So it's sort of like the other way around from what we're talking about in some ways. So I think that I don't disagree that it would be helpful here to have a separate definition that's very clear, because having that definition for, that was written with lobbyists in mind would be confusing when you start talking about state employees and boards and commissions and these other scenarios. So I don't disagree with the approach. And I think there is a way to make it pretty clear following, basically the intent of what that existing statute is trying to do.
So just to remind me, the one in campaign finance one does have a $20 limit?
It
I
does.
think yes, I think it does. And so even if, like when Blue Cross Blue Shield puts on their legislative night, okay, they don't do it anymore because we're all remote, but if they serve, if they have shrimp and really wonderful things, and they figure that for each person who comes, it's over that amount, they have to list it on our donation list.
Yep.
And that's why we sign in when we go to places.
Yep, that's exactly right. There is a piece in there too, where if it's a large enough event where there's more than, I think, 20 or 50 legislators involved, like there's a exemption for that. But yes, that is why they have you do that.
I think Pat had a comment. Thank you, Ben.
You're muted.
She's looking.
Ta-da. Sorry about that. For the record, Pat McDonald. I was thinking about when employees, state employees like myself, would go to conferences and there would be a big event sponsored by, I don't know, 3M, IBM, whatever. Some states, as long as it was open to everybody, would allow us to go. Other states, like Pennsylvania, if it was sponsored by a lobbyist, you were out of luck. You couldn't go have the shrimp and all the stuff. And I've never seen that printed anywhere. And I've always wanted as a backup to say, yes, we were right in our interpretation, that if you went to an open event, that it was okay, because they weren't singling out me to, now they may talk to me at the event, that's for sure, but they weren't singling me out for the dinner or to talk to Vermont to get something done.
Yeah.
So, but I've never seen that in print anywhere, and I don't know whether it's a good thing to confirm it someplace or just to, it may be someplace, I've just never seen it.
Well, that could be one of the exceptions here.
Yep.
Is that state employees, board and commission members and stuff can, if there's something like that. I mean, that could, yeah.
Because Pennsylvania, if they saw IBM or anybody's name on it, none of the employees who went to the conference could go, which was sort of a shame because you did miss out on talking to people and the benefit of being at a conference is being able to share ideas and meet other people from other states, but that's the way they did it. So that's it, sorry.
But that could be. So I don't know the best way to go about this. If maybe we can have Christina and TJ, if you're willing, and Ameren to try and come with some language, try and put this together somehow, reflecting what we've been talking about here. And I would say feel free to reach out to Ben or Pat or anybody else who
for sure.
Has thoughts. I have, this is beyond me to try to wordsmith now. I mean, I think that if we have something that we can look at, then we can respond to that. Does that make sense, committee?
Yeah.
Is to put kind of this general language about not taking anything for less than value, and then have the exemptions underneath. And I wouldn't put exemptions for legislators in there because we're already covered someplace else. We're already, whether it's in here or not, we are covered. Yes, Allison?
Well, I think the public will be reading this document and that should be articulated somewhere, Amarin, that we're covered elsewhere. You know, I think if we're missing, people will have a problem with our being missing from this document. But I know this is small, but we've gone from some small things. What is the difference between de minimis and nominal? Because we're talking about nominal gifts, which are often de minimis, but nominal to one person is not the same as nominal to another person. Anyway, I'm just curious, as we use, those are the two terms that are used other than a money amount of an exact figure. So I'd appreciate Amarin maybe looking at those definitions and making a suggestion when we next gather.
Thanks. Yeah, I have no idea what. Amarin, did you?
No, I just wanted to make sure I understand the direction that you're going with this. So right now we would be taking out the current definition of gift as it's
Right.
currently written, putting in something that is much broader, like a gift is anything of value, tangible or intangible, that is bestowed for less than adequate consideration, right? As just a broad definition. And then when you go down to the gift section, it would talk about exceptions, right?
I don't know that you even need to put it in the definition section if it's just in gifts, because we don't define in the definition section, for example, we don't define
Yeah, I was imagining it
outside
would just be in the gift section.
huh?
I was imagining it would just be in the gift section.
Yeah, because we don't define outside employment in the definition section, and we don't define post-government employee or any of those things in the definition. So I don't think I would even put a definition in there. I would just put it in the number 9 or whatever number that is.
Yeah, and then you don't have to say legislators are covered elsewhere. I mean, you could just identify what.
Yeah,
I don't
I-
think you have to say that. I think if somebody has a question about it, they could ask, but I wouldn't mention legislators one way or the other. I would just say
No.
this is how we define a gift.
Right.
But I wouldn't put it in the definition section.
Right.
I would
No,
just put it
agree.
in the under
In the gift section.
point
Good.
number 9 or whatever it is.
Yeah, under 9. I think you're right.
I don't know if that is right or not, but if we define gifts in the definition section, then it seems to me that we should also define employment restrictions or post-government employment or outside employment, those terms, because those terms aren't defined somewhere. So that you look skeptical, Amarin.
Who me? I was just, it was occurring to me, maybe we should be thinking about if those need to be defined.
I don't think so, because if we put them all in the definitions, that they're in the, we
Right,
would
they're
end up
in the
having
body
to
of-
define. There are a lot of terms in here that are used, and if we would have to define them all. I don't think we have to define all those things.
Just state what they are, as we do on page 9, under number
Yeah.
9.
Okay.
Let's do it that way, and then we can see if that satisfies.
Okay, so if the,
Okay, so, and I don't think we're gonna have time today unless you want to get into the conflict of interest one. We can do it, but I would go back. Senator Clarkson had one kind of simple question, just as a clarification on line 11. Page 11, lines 18 and 19, about the legislators post-employment. And I believe that says that a legislator cannot be a lobbyist for 1 year after their term ends.
Yep.
That's the only one I'm aware of, but are there others that would be I guess one of my questions is, are there other post-employment things that would seem inappropriate? Or, I mean, that's the only one that we've dealt with, but there may be others that we haven't thought about or that we just haven't addressed.
For legislators, for post-employment?
Yeah.
I will tell you that I'm not going to go there because we are a citizen legislature. And if you're going to start telling me that when I'm done with my terms, I can't get a job someplace. The
Yeah, no,
legislative, huh?
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. Maybe just leave it and but again, instead of referring, you could just easily say that you could, I mean, do you want to keep the reference or do you want to spell it out?
I don't care one way or the other, but I don't want to expand it because I think that that's a problem. And if we start doing that, we are really tampering with our citizen legislature.
Can I
Yeah,
just
Senator
read?
Collmore?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just going to read what it says because I think I understand it. Except as permitted in subdivision 4 of this subdivision B, a former legislative branch employee shall not, for 1 year after leaving state service, be an advocate for anyone other than the state for compensation before the General Assembly or any of its subparts, et cetera, et cetera. So it doesn't completely prohibit.
No, that's the legislative branch employee. Read the one above it, the legislator.
Sorry. Well, all it says is shall comply with the post-government employee restrictions prescribed in Title II.
Yeah, no, that's
266.
what Allison is wondering what 2
Okay.
VSA 266 says.
And it basically just says that for 1 year, you cannot
Yes.
be a lobbyist.
Yes.
I happen to have the book right here.
Ben, did you have?
Yeah, that is what it says. And that was part of the original ethics bill that was passed back in 2017, included that definition of post-employment restrictions for 1 year. And that was a debate back then because there was some discussion about many states do 2 years. We decided, I think, to do 1 year for Vermont. That seemed like a better balance. Again, because of the citizen legislature piece, that seemed like a better fit for Vermont. There are other post-employment restrictions across state government. For example, DFR, you can't, as a regulator, you can't go and work for a financial firm for a certain period. There's a cooling off period before you can do that. These types of post-employment restrictions are meant to address revolving door issues where, regulators take jobs in industries that they regulated. That's usually the executive branch side of things, what we're looking to prevent. That could be applicable in some cases to boards and commissions as well. I haven't read the definitions in this particular bill to see if that's the case, but you could think of like the first example that's popping into my head could be like the Green Mountain Care Board, for example. Someone went and took a job with a hospital that they're regulating. We would likely expect them to have a cooling off period, so they can't go right from board service as a regulator into employment. So there is some applicability there for boards and commissions as well.
But I think that if we think about expanding this, we are dooming it to failure at the beginning.
Yeah, I'm not necessarily, I don't know how this, I'd have to look at these definitions again that are in this bill to know if that's what's happening here. I'm just saying we shouldn't, that's something to keep in the back of your mind is like, there are some situations where boards are regulators.
Oh, no, I didn't mean there. I meant for legislators.
Oh,
I was,
for legislators.
yeah.
No,
Allison?
the definition as is.
So I think I'm okay with this at the moment, but I think obviously we can revisit some of this and improve on it and for years to come. I think the boards and commissions is a little interesting. We have examples of that. Not legislators, but members of boards and commissions who have come into state government immediately after serving on a board and commission. It's certainly something to think about, but I think for out years.
Mhm.
I
Yeah, and
think-
I wouldn't necessarily be worried about them taking a
Mhm.
position within state government after serving on a board. And it's more of a issue, I think, if they are on a commission that is a regulatory commission.
Yeah, and then go. Yeah.
And then go and take a job at a business or organization that they are regulating. That would be more of a concern.
Yeah.
An
DLL,
executive off,
Yeah.
go ahead. Executive officers are prohibited from doing that.
Executive officers are, yeah.
Yeah. Board, yeah. Okay, where are we, committee?
I think we're good to go, but I would save conflict of interest. I have a 4:30 meeting, so I would love to save conflict of interest, which I think is a big conversation.
So let's, maybe we can, I would love to get this done with, as I think we all would. Maybe look at next week. Amarin, is that possible for you to get what we've talked about today in a form by the end of next week?
Yes.
Okay, and then we can take on the conflict of interest issue. And in the meantime, we should maybe just do some research on our own about different places where they have conflict of interest and how they define it and what it means and stuff, so that we can, and Christina and TJ, if you have anything,
Yeah.
send it to us, and the same with Pat and Ben. Pat?
You're muted, Pat.
I'm trying to be a good doobie here, because I have all kinds of things going on. So anyway, you didn't mention boards and commissions, and that is something I'd like to be
Yeah.
invited back to talk about, just to add to all the stuff you've got to do already.
Yeah, I think that that's another conversation that we need to have. We'll try and address
Okay.
that again next time also, about and what it
Thank you.
means. And I'm not sure if I'll send a note to Kendall about that. I'm not sure who took Jason Malucci's position with the on the boards and commissions, and he did it for such a long time that maybe he would be willing to even come and talk to us about kind of their screening process and how they do it and some of the issues are involved in it. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
All right, anything? Christina?
Yeah, so I just want to circle back to gifts and clarify, when we're talking about removing the dollar amount, is that just from the definition? Or are we still going to have it under an exception? Because I do think there would be a downside to having a determined dollar amount. Then maybe we could come up with some pros and cons and put it on the table for next time as well.
Yeah, I would say, I'm not sure how it should be, but, and I wouldn't have anything in the definitions at all. And then, under here, so you have gift exceptions, or, I would make it a little bit clearer than it is in here, but, however it gets, defined, and then what the exceptions are, and then we'll, address them, because I don't know at this point, and I don't know what we think. Okay.
I don't know about putting a dollar amount on it. I really, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. I don't know, and I don't know what the dollar amount should be. Okay, can I tell you a really funny something that, and I hope nobody misinterprets this, but so a long time ago, I was working with Paul Burns on something, and his wife was pregnant at the time, and they had a Vermont Day up in the State House cafeteria, and Putney Winery was up there, and I said, "Oh, you should get some. This is really good. This is really good stuff. You should get some." And he said, "Oh, well, my wife can't drink alcohol now because and I said, oh, well, they have a nice bubbly that's non-alcoholic. So I brought him up a bottle of it the next time I went home, and I gave it to him, and he made some comment about looking something that people might look askance. And I said, oh, I guess I misunderstood it. You're supposed to be giving me the gifts, not me giving you the gifts. It was quite funny at the time. And I just keep thinking about that silly little bottle of bubbly that could have gotten me in trouble had he given it to me. Any more questions or comments before or anything else that we should be looking at? Conflict of interest, boards and commissions. Yes, TJ.
Would it benefit the process to just sort of lay out some of the concerns about the conflict of interest provision? Not try to resolve them today, but just.
Oh, sure. To help you guys going forward. Sure. Brian knows about my paper horrible inability to keep my papers. Okay. I think here's some of my concerns, and other people jump in with concerns. I think that first of all, there isn't really a definition of conflict of interest. I can't remember. Is that in the definitions?
Yeah, it's on page 2.
Right. Page 2. What does it say? I can't.
Means an interest, direct or
Oh, yeah.
indirect, or otherwise, et cetera, of a public servant, or such an interest known to the public servant of a member of the public servant's immediate family or household or business associate.
Yeah.
Any outcome of a particular matter pending before the public servant or the public servant's public body, or that is in conflict with the proper discharge of the public servant's duties. Conflict of interest does not include any interest that is of no greater than that of other persons generally affected by the outcome of a matter, such as a policyholder in the insurance company or a depositor in a bank.
Yeah, and I don't know, it seems like a really dense definition to me. I don't know that I have particular concerns about the definition, but I do have a concern that it impacts all boards and commissions here. And I think that is a concern that I have, because we have almost 3,200 people in Vermont that are on boards and commissions. And some of them really, there are different levels of boards. There are some that are simply advisory. There are some that just get together and hear reports. So I fear that because this applies to all boards and commissions, that is a definition that's too broad. And then when you go to course of action, I think that also is really too broad. That's on page 6, in terms of asking people to ask a board member of a small board to ask them to write this statement about why they should be allowed to go forward. I just so that's my concern, is some of that. I think it's too cumbersome for many of the people that serve. I mean, this is a pretty extensive, well, it wouldn't have to be, it could be one sentence, but And so then, you do that. I mean, there's, like 11, there's 22 lines of stuff that you're supposed to address in your explanation here. So,
Yeah, I agree. We have to pare that down somehow. I'm thinking of a cemetery commission board or something. I mean,
well, they wouldn't be affected because they're a municipal, but
okay,
the, some of the boards and commissions that we've been looking at in the Sunset Advisory Committee,
right.
they don't have any power. They, they might be advisory, but so I think that that's, and even for, an employee, I guess, if you, if something comes up and I'm not, the other thing that we really need to talk about is whether this applies to legislators or not. But if it should apply to legislators, I'm not going to write these all down when I'm just going to stand up and say, excuse me, under Rule 73, I might have a conflict. And the General Assembly, the Senate is going to decide whether I have a conflict or not, and whether I should recuse myself. And that's the end of it. I'm not going to write down all these things saying why I should be allowed to continue. That's up to the other senators to let me or not. So if this doesn't apply to the General Assembly, then it's less important in that aspect, but I think it is important for our boards and commissions, and even some state employees that might have a conflict to have to write all this down. And then, anyway, Ben.
Madam Chair, sorry, I just have to excuse myself.
Okay.
Thanks. Thank you, everybody. See you tomorrow.
Bye.
Thank you. Just one quick thought to leave you with. I know we don't want to get too far into this today, and nor should we, because we should give the appropriate amount of time to discuss it. One thought I would leave you with is, as currently written, this gives persons who have a potential conflict of interest, as defined, the option to recuse themselves from a vote. That is an action they can take themselves to just say, nope, I think I have a conflict here, I'm done. That puts them in compliance with the code. The option number 2 is to say, I might have the appearance of a conflict, but I don't actually think I'm conflicted here. And in that case, provide that explanation. And there's that, 21 lines of like, here's guidance for what should be in that explanation. I think really what most people will be looking for is like, this should be a 1-page, like, here's why it might look like I have a conflict, but my conflict is really de minimis in nature, and here's why. That's sort of what it's getting at, I think. And Christina, I don't know is that consistent with your understanding as well?
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it's really looking for a book. It's just covering the main points and having it written down somewhere as a reference. And so I don't know, maybe it would be helpful if we come up with an example for next time to review of what it might look like in reality.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That would be good. Yeah.
And I'll just, going back to the point earlier about the definition of conflict of interest, it is possible that the boards and commissions are already covered by this definition, because in the Executive Code of Ethics actually uses this exact definition. And so depending if appointee is defined the same way as it is in the Vermont Human Resources policies and procedures, it is possible that all of them or a majority of them are already subject to that definition. So it might be worth following up to see where there's overlap and if it's 100% overlap, because it might end up being a moot point.
Okay. Good thought. Yeah. Okay. Other than that, any other thoughts?
I'm all thought out.
Me too.
Tomorrow you'll be all thawed out.
Yeah, really.
Or maybe not.
Or maybe not.
Isn't it supposed to get really cold tonight?
Yeah.
Yes.
Can I put Title II back on the shelf now?
Yes. Thank you. And everybody, thank you for your indulgence on some of these things. I just, I think that this is a really important thing to do and to get done, and want to make sure that we do it in a manner that both gives the public confidence that people, that our government employees and officials are acting in the best faith, and that also doesn't make it so burdensome for those people who are those employees and officials, and doesn't, and given the fact that we are such a small state, doesn't, there was a potential conflict of interest with the VPIC board at one point, and it just seemed so silly, but because of the definition, it meant that somebody couldn't take a job as a school teacher. Somebody's son couldn't take a job as a school teacher because VPIC covers the investments of the teacher's retirement system. And we are such a small state that there's always going to be overlap. So I think that it's important to get this balanced right. And we want to do it in such a way that we can make sure that it meets the straight face test and passes the Senate and the House.
Right.
So, thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.